Hey everybody, welcome back to the Spearfactor. It's been a little bit of time. I was taken away from work, so I wasn't able to record any podcast, and then the holidays. But we're back now in full swing, and I say we, I guess meaning me. But but our first guest for this new year is Mr. Derik Rush from San Diego. Derik, welcome to the show.
What's up, guys? It's great to be on here. Finally, been watching the podcast for quite some time now, so it's great to be on here.
Yeah, it's I'm excited to have you. Just I guess it's just my own. It's selfish, but it just you've like literally. I know you live. I'm assuming you probably live down the street, and we can get into more of that, like your ties with Spear Shack and all that. But
Yeah,
I just I feel like through Instagram the last I don't know maybe 5 years maybe I don't know you've been posting more and more and more and I never really had a chance to link up with you, and I've linked up with some of your friends. We have mutual friends, but um, just kind of seeing you grow through Instagram, which is funny. But it's true, like
yeah,
seeing, oh, he's shooting
totally.
big grouper now. Oh, he was he was living on a sailboat, I think, or taking a sailboat. Now he's just like really gotten all into it.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I was,
100%.
yeah, I'm excited to just to chat with you about that. So I guess we'll start it all off like how we usually do, just a little bit of your background. Doesn't necessarily have to be diving, but where are you from and all of that jazz.
Yeah, 100%. I was born here in San Diego, but moved out to Colorado when I was about 2 years old. So I kind of grew up out there. So quite a ways away from the ocean, but I was always, involved with water type activities and never really got into like any serious like water sports or anything like that. But whether it was shooting the rapids or going cliff jumping, any way that I could be in the water, I was always, just thrilled with that. So when I wound up back here in San Diego, I was about 15 years old. It was only a matter of time before, something in the ocean caught my attention. And really, I think the first thing that really kicked that off was I took a just shore dive spearfishing tour that I found through Groupon when I was 17 years old. I was just bored looking for something to do, and it caught my eye and looked like something fun. So we did that. We went out of La Jolla, and it just blew my mind what we had in our backyard. I had no idea that that was even a thing. I had no idea the insane ecosystem that we had out there. And so it just really drew me to the ocean at that point. I was lucky enough to shoot a couple small like calicos and opali on that first trip. And so I was just instantly hooked from there. Um, yeah, that was with a little company called Aquaholics, and they immediately recommended me to go visit Mark at the Spear Shack. So I went there like the same week and loaded up on a full beginner set of gear and just started diving 5, 6 days a week off the shore by myself. Um, Through that, it was only a matter of time till I ended up like seeing that guy who I took that initial tour with. I kept running into him down in La Jolla. So him and I started going out together. And then soon enough, I was running trips with him, just mostly little snorkeling tours in the cove, just taking out tourists, but, just getting in the water as much as possible. And I feel like just doing that, my passion for the water and spearfishing and just being in the water in general just continued to grow and grow and grow. And it was around that same time that my friendship with Mark began to build as well. He started kind of taking me under his wing and showing me the ropes as far as diving San Diego for like yellowtail and white sea bass, and then also down into Baja. So I ended up becoming boat partners with him on his 29-foot Erickson, and we would take that to the Coronado Islands and dive off of his kayaks, and we'd stay there for like 3 days at a time. So I feel like that's really where I like honed my skills as a spear fisherman, was just diving with Mark, because that dude is just so wild. It's like he's not necessarily there to teach you, he's there for you to like try and stick next to him as much as possible and just like learn by watching essentially. So you got to like keep up or you're going to get left behind with him. So it was a really great learning experience going along with him. And then other places down in Baja as well. We did a lot of trips driving down and then flying down. So just learning the ropes of SoCal and Baja spearfishing through him. And then, yeah, probably about a year after I got into spearfishing and just that love was growing and growing. Is the guy who I was working for with Aquaholics. He mentioned that Martin Stepanek from FII was coming to town to do a first like formal freedive course, and I didn't know that was even a thing at this point. So I was like, sounds like a good experience. Probably work on our safety a little bit, get our buddy system down. So we did that, and then that just drew me down a whole nother rabbit hole. Whereas instead of chasing the fish and just having a specific goal in mind, it's now chasing that feeling and just the feeling that comes along with depth. So that just took me down a complete another path. And I mean, I still love shooting big fish. That's where my passion is, but I feel like you only want to shoot so much fish, and you got to have something to do on the off time. So just like training and training and training really caught my attention. And it was pretty soon after I took that first course with FII that Just Get Wet started doing their beach meetups. And that really caught my attention. I feel like before then there wasn't really any place you could go to in San Diego to really train. It was just going off the shore with some friends and, hunting in the kelp or whatever. There was no like real formal free dive group at that point. So just having a place to come out every week and work on those skills really helped draw me more towards that free dive side of things. It was probably about a year after I did that first course that I ended up doing my level 2, just falling more in love with chasing depth. And it was pretty soon after then that Chris Cheesem had approached me about coming in training with Just Get Wet to work as an assistant. So it's what I've been doing for a while with them. I recently went through a full instructor course, so I got that full certification, and then I've been in the shop with them quite a bit lately as well. So it's kind of where I'm at this point.
How is the shop doing? The shop for all the listeners out there is in Mission Beach, right on the main strip there. Is it pretty crowded in there when you're working on the weekends? Do you get a lot of people to come through?
This time of year, especially with like the run of swells and storms that we've been having, it has been a little bit slower. But during like our peak seasons, especially like gearing up into summer, it gets pretty hectic in there. Yeah, it gets pretty busy, but it's fun. That's where we teach our classes too. So we got a really great place to like build that community there in Mission Beach as well.
Yeah. Very cool. A couple of things I wanted to talk to you more about, I guess, was you mentioned Mark taking you down to Baja and driving down and flying down. And, Mark is the man for like Baja. I mean, just
100%.
He's been diving since the 80s, I guess late 80s. Yeah, he was the first time I think he turned me on to a couple places or showed me some video years ago. I was like, oh, okay. Definitely need to go there. But how were those trips with him? Is it just you and him? I mean, he's a pretty cool guy. But he's 60 years old, and that guy just is not letting up,
Oh, he's wild. He is so wild in the water. He is an absolute beast. And yeah, some of them were like really productive. Some of them were not so productive because he is the type of guy to like just, have an idea, and we go down there whether we know the spot or not. And I feel like it's kind of that really like caught my attention with him. It's like I feel like other people that I've gone down with, they have like a certain goal in mind. They have like certain dates that they have to go down. They have a certain place, and it's like if that doesn't work out, they get all bummed out. But Mark is like, we're just going to go down and we're going to make the best of it, and we're going to make something work out. And it's the biggest thing that I gained with him, because now when I do our trips, it's like we have an area that we're looking for, but we don't really have any set plans. It's like we're going to go down and see what happens. We're just going to talk to the locals. I think that was the coolest thing going down with him, is seeing how he operates on like a different scale than everyone else down there. Just
Very
go
cool.
and like pull up in the little towns and stuff and start asking around and just figure it out as we go, essentially. And I feel like that's where like the real Baja adventure comes from. I mean, like shooting the fish and everything is cool, but I feel like you really go to Baja for the adventure.
100%. I mean, if anybody knows Mark, I don't think you can get out of that shop in under an hour.
No.
Yeah, I definitely can. I can talk, but Mark puts me to shame. But also, like you said, the real Baja adventure is just word of mouth.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that kind of leads me to the difference of like, paying for a guide to go to Baja. It's really, you lose so much. I just feel like, rather than just go down there and figure it out yourself. I understand some people don't have the time, but there is something to be said about going down there and just figuring stuff out, because you can apply that across all spectrums of like, or, and like you said, I think you learn so much more. You get a little bit of that trial and error, and you figure out what works, what doesn't work. And, some area could be hot one day and off the next day. And then,
Yeah, that's just how it goes. You just got to try. You got to explore new places, go where people tell you shouldn't. Just, you never know what you're going to find down there.
Yeah. So when you were training with Martin, how was that transition? Like, 'cause I'm assuming, with Mark, he is a spear fisherman, like, and he'll tell you like the freediving thing, like, yeah, okay, but he is a spear fisherman.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. So going from that to Martin, where it's like we're exclusively freediving, pushing depth. I guess what were some of the issues, if any, that you encountered kind of making that transition, or were you surprised how easy it was, I guess?
I think at that point, like, I was already so comfortable in the water that the transition was pretty easy. I think the biggest difficulty, if anything, is just like staying relaxed at those deeper depths. I feel like, especially once you start pushing it like past 20, 30 meters, it starts like getting a little bit eerie if you've never been to those depths before. So it just takes time to get down there and like realize what your body is capable of. But honestly, it wasn't really that big of a transition to me from the spearfishing to the freediving. More so, it was just taking those skills that I had learned in the formal freedive classes and better be able to adapt them to my spearfishing and know that I can handle those deeper depths. That way, when I am spearfishing shallower, that I'm way more confident in my abilities, because that's the biggest thing that goes into any sort of diving, is just your relaxation and your confidence. If you can be a comfortable diver at 130 feet, then hunting at 60, 70 feet is going to be much easier for you.
Well, that kind of leads me to my next question, because I've always wondered this, because I know for me personally, but what depths are you comfortable freediving to, versus you particularly, what depths are you comfortable spearfishing to? Because I feel it's kind of interesting. Yeah.
100%. So for myself, when I'm like good, when I'm like on my training how I should be, especially like during the summer months, I can hit 40 meters pretty consistently. That's free dive training, just going down straight back up. Whereas if I'm spearfishing, it really depends on the location I'm in. Sometimes if it's like cold, green, murky water, try not to push it usually too much past 20 meters. But if it is like a little bit warmer, a little bit clearer water, I'll push it typically down to 30. But really past then, it starts, the risk to reward ratio stops going up for me, and it starts becoming a little bit risky diving at those depths, especially depending on who you're diving with as well. If you have a buddy who you really trust with you in the water, and if anything happens, he's going to be right there, you might feel a little bit more comfortable pushing your skills a little bit. But if maybe you don't necessarily trust who's at the surface 100%, then you're going to err on the side of caution a little bit. So it all just comes down to time and place when it comes to spearfishing.
Right. I like what you said there. Yeah. And then too, if it's murky, it's going to take that much longer for your buddy to kind of locate you or find you.
Yeah.
Do you usually, your main partner that you dive with, is it typically usually Nathaniel?
When I'm going down to Baja, it's typically either Nathan Manata, or my other buddy, Zach. Zach I've been diving with for a while. He's another shack bro. So he's been my dive buddy for a while at this point too. We've been going down together pretty much since I've been going down to Baja.
Awesome. And I saw recently, like, do you have, I guess recently, now that you've been diving and you've been training, you guys are training every Sunday, I'm assuming, and it looked like you guys are training Wednesdays too, right? Or are you participating in that as well? From
we haven't
the
really been going
crew?
out too much on Wednesdays. It's mostly been like Sundays for our group line dive session out at La Jolla. And occasionally, like, some of the group will go out on our own to do some depth training as well. But for the most part, it's on Sundays.
Okay. Do you have a particular goal for freediving, or do you like, for depth, or are you just trying to, I mean, do you have a goal for depth, and do you have a goal for like hang time, bottom time?
Usually when I'm just doing my free dive training, like around 40 meters is all I'm really looking to push it. I feel like past that, it starts getting a little bit risky when it comes to like getting squeezes, especially with where we are in San Diego. It's pretty tough diving here with the cold and the thermoclines that we have. So usually around 40 meters is pretty good for me. Some other people are pushing it past that. They're just absolute beasts. But for myself, I'm not trying to get into any sort of like competitive free diving or anything like that. Like my love is spearfishing, and then passing on the safety knowledge to other free divers and other spear fishermen to keep, the growing community safe in the water as well. So just, keeping my skills up to par is really the biggest thing that I'm looking for when I'm out there free diving. As far as like bottom times, I don't really push statics too much. Usually my longest bottom times when I'm like diving is around a minute or so when I'm doing my like spear fishing. Free dive training, I might go a little bit longer, just because a lot of it is free fall. When you're on the line, you can stay a lot more relaxed than if you're diving around looking for fish, exerting energy. So maybe minute and a half or so, but nothing too crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting, going through, I guess, ways or time when I was diving, free diving more than others, and it was like the whole goal, like you, was I'm doing this to be a better spear fisherman, not to be a better free diver, because I don't really have any desire to competitively free dive, and I'm terrible at it anyway, so why waste my time? But it was like, okay, I'm going to go 30 feet, 60 feet and try to hang, to try to simulate like a dive for hunting, and try to mimic that if I could dive more efficiently, I can do these minute bottom times at 60 or 70 feet or whatever it is, and like really try to get your mind custom, like you said, to deeper depths or longer time, just be comfortable with the pressure. So I'm always, it's always interesting to talk to another person that's like, yeah, I like spearfishing, but free diving is a means to be a better spearfisherman. So yeah, it seems
100%.
It seems the culture's funny. It like kind of goes one way or the other. And sometimes like people get into free diving after they've been spearfishing, and then they just go all into free diving. Like, I gotta go depth. And I don't know about you, but like going to 180 meter or 180 feet is terrifying to me. That just sounds like, I don't say it's terrifying, but it's like, this is pointless. If I get hurt doing this, I'm going to be like really upset. Like,
for me, I just like dive into the point that like I'm relaxed. If I start getting to the point with like my free diving that I start like tensing up and it stops like feeling good, even if I can do it, then that's not a good dive for me. That's not a dive that I want to be doing. Everything should be just nice and relaxed and enjoyable, because I feel like that's the biggest thing, is just going out there and having fun,
Yeah, and I think too, especially where we live here and even Baja, it's like if I have to dive to 100 feet to shoot a fish, like something's really wrong. Like this is a bad day. Like there are spots and pinnacles that's like around 120, and I'm like, I literally would train exclusively just to hit this high spot, knowing that it's probably loaded. But even then, I get too distracted with just spearfishing in general to like focus on it. So you said you were an assistant in the class, and you've got your instructor, correct? You're an instructor, freedive instructor, and that's all under PFI or FI.
So I had been assisting under Molchanov's. I went through a Molchanov's instructor course a while ago. Didn't get the full certification at that point, but I was able to get my assistant certification. So for about the past 2 years or so, I've been just assisting with the courses, helping out. And then back in November, we did a PADI instructor course. So that's who I have my instructor certification with at this point, is PADI's Freedive agency.
Okay. Did you like, what do you think about the difference, your experience with the different programs? Like, I've only done PADI because it was the only thing available at the time where I was. And I've done PADI.
Honestly,
go ahead.
I've gone through FII, I've done Malkinov courses, I've done PADI courses. They're all very, very, very similar. The guidelines vary differently, but I feel like the bulk of the safety and the skills and the technique, it's very similar throughout. I think the biggest thing is what instructor you have teaching you, because instructors are going to teach the course however they're going to teach it, whether it's a PADI course or Malkinov's course or whatever. Each instructor has their own personality when they're teaching the course, and there's set guidelines that have to be taught, but then there's also things that each instructor is going to throw in there personally. And I feel like that's what really makes the course. It's just finding one of those instructors that you click with, and then I feel like that's the best way to get something out of it. But as far as like the differences, they're very, very similar between all of the ones that I've experienced.
Could you give an example of that? Because I've heard that from numerous people. And again, I've taken the courses that I've taken have been with the same instructor. And I think I have an idea of what that is, but like, could you give an example of stuff you've seen? Because obviously Just Get Wet has multiple instructors. You've experienced instructors outside of there and within the Just Get Wet crew. Yeah, could you please give an example of that?
Yeah, it's just like, people click with people in different ways. And just because somebody's a freedive instructor doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to click with them perfectly. Whereas they might be a fantastic instructor for one person, they might not necessarily be the best instructor for another person, regardless of how their skills are. And I've had instructors in the past that, I just haven't necessarily clicked with that closely. And I feel like at that point, it's just like hard to gain all the information from the course if you're not able to be like super personal with them. I don't know if that necessarily makes sense. Whereas I've had other instructors where like that relationship is able to be a lot closer and you're able to like go into more depth and like just have a little bit more trust in that person, I would almost say. And that's, I feel like the biggest thing is just finding somebody that you click with.
Well, I think kind of like buying into it. I think if someone maybe is a little bit more, I guess you're right. It's like if someone is a freediver and you take their class and they're just into freediving and not spearfishing at all, and you as a spearfisherman are taking their class, some people are more abrasive than others, I guess, or like the two cultures are kind of different.
Yeah.
Just talk to Mark, he'll tell you. Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting. I kind of see what you're saying there. Like anything, I mean, I'm an instructor too. It's just different instructors have different things, I guess. Not a freedive instructor, just another instructor. Sorry. If you don't want me teaching you how to freedive, you won't be very good at it. All right. So let's talk about recently, like, have you traveled anywhere besides Baja or just Baja?
The Baja is really all I've done for spearfishing. I've done a couple trips to the Yucatan with Just Get Wet to dive in the cenotes, but that's been more like strictly freedive training. But for spearfishing, it's been all Baja at this point.
So what was that like when you went to the Yucatan Peninsula? Because it was freshwater, right?
Yeah, it's such a big difference. It was like a pretty difficult change for me to get used to, honestly, because all my experience had been pretty much like out here in San Diego when it came to like real freedive training. So I'm so used to the cold. I'm so used to experiencing the thermoclines. So when we went out there, it was fresh water. There were no thermoclines. It was the same the entire way down. So that was throwing me off. And then just the clarity of it as well. I feel like most people like really like the clarity. For me, I mean, it's beautiful to dive in, but I get so distracted when I'm like focusing on my actual dives that I just forget to like go through all the steps in my dives that I need to. So it was just such a change. And it's amazing for just like fun diving. It's amazing for photography. It's amazing for most people for training as well. But for me, like, I don't know, I just don't click and don't end up hitting my deepest dives when I'm down there. Like I end up preferring the colder water almost. But yeah, it's amazing down there, and the instructors in the area are really amazing as well. So whether I'm like not hitting my deepest depths down there, the knowledge that I find myself always coming back with from those trips, it completely changes my diving experience moving forward.
Do you feel like with it being so clear that it's almost like overwhelming? Just like,
100%.
yeah.
It's so easy to get distracted. You'll just be down there and you're like, I cannot believe what is around me right now. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I just missed my mouth filled time, or yeah, or I just missed my equalization because I was just looking at this cave that's in front of me. Yeah. It's amazing diving down there though. And I feel like one of the coolest things is that each cenote has like a completely different vibe than the next. It's not like you've seen one cenote, you've seen them all. It's like each one of them has their completely own identity to it. You know, like there's some of them where there's just giant mounds with trees coming out of the mist at the bottom of it. There's some of them where they're super deep and super clear the entire way down and they're inside of a cave. There's some of them where it looks like it's just a tiny little hole at the surface, and then you get down there and it just opens up to this giant chasm. So just getting to go and experience all those different like dive locations in such a small area, it's a pretty trippy experience.
Do you, for the people that don't know, do you mind explaining or describing what a cenote actually is?
Yeah, totally. So in the Yucatan down in the mainland of Mexico, there's a bunch of freshwater sinkholes essentially, and they're all connected via underwater cave systems. And they think that most of them actually end up leading out to the ocean as well. So most of these cenotes, you have a little small opening at the surface, and then it can drop anywhere from 30 to 80 meters to the bottom, in most of the ones that I've experienced. And I think one of the other really trippy things about these cenotes is that although it's freshwater at the surface, when you get to about 30 meters or so, you hit a halocline. So it switches from being freshwater to saltwater. And at that mixing layer, there's typically like a sulfur cloud. So you're diving in this super clear layer of water, and then all of a sudden you just enter into this cloud. And at that point, it throws in a whole nother aspect of difficulty into your diving, because the halocline is going to be a different salinity than the rest of the water above you. So you're going from this fresh water into the salt water. It's changing your buoyancy. And for me, typically I'll hit those haloclines and I'll stop moving. So I'll have to continue kicking again once I get past there. So it's just, yeah, it's super trippy, but it's such a wild place to dive in, and it's so cool.
Does you notice that it gets blurry when you transition from that freshwater to saltwater? Is it like get a little blurry?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
At first it'll start getting blurry, but then once you get down below it, it's just pitch black. You can't see anything past there. Light just can't penetrate. You'll like open your eyes and you can't see your hand in front of your face.
Yeah, I've been up in Washington State diving where it's so much runoff, where the first 3 feet is freshwater, and then that 3 feet it's just blurry, like you're trying to look like there's something on your lenses or something, and then past that it's all clear. But yeah, and then we also had one of our drones get stuck about 3 feet below the surface because the salinity. You know what I mean?
Couldn't make it back up.
Yeah, it won't make it back up because the density obviously of water changes. But
That's trippy.
That's what I was curious about when you said you stopped. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So what is your goals? Like, do you have any goals in the freediving arena? Like, do you want to become a full blown instructor, or are you good where you're at? Or, I mean, obviously you want to grow your knowledge, right? So.
Yeah, I am a full instructor at this point. I went through the course, I passed all the certifications and everything. So I'm starting to teach people through PADI. I think as far as freediving goes, it's just upping those certifications a little bit more, getting to the point where I can teach the intermediate and advanced courses. After that, I don't really have any goals at this point of moving beyond that. I don't really want to be an instructor trainer or anything like that. I think just growing the freedive community, creating a safer community and just getting that kind of knowledge out there is going to be my biggest thing, as well as, like opening people up to the world of spearfishing if that's the path they're drawn to as well. I love just sharing the passion of the ocean with others.
Very cool. One thing I like is it didn't seem like you were a freediving student one day and then an instructor and a few months later. Like I said, I've been following you for a while, and it seems like this has been a gradual thing. And then I think, and that's a testament to the whole organization and you. I mean, there's something about someone goes from zero to hero. I'm like, well, yeah, there's a lot of things you miss along the way. And if you do that, like a lot of the struggles that you learn as you go through the diving part, now you can teach students. But if you've never really seen it or been through your experience level, right, it's like, then you don't have, obviously you have other great free divers around you to help. But as an instructor, if you're solo in it, you may not have enough experience to share someone past a plateau or something like that.
100%.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. How long do you say, like, before you were like a student, right, back in the day, and then now you're an instructor, how long was that time period?
I'd say it was about 2 years being a student, and that was like going through my beginner and then like my intermediate and into my advanced courses. And then it was pretty much as soon as I went through that like wave 3/instructor combo course with Molchanovs that I started assisting with courses. And I feel like it was that assisting time that I got where I really like honed my skills and like became confident teaching courses. It wasn't just like, well, I just learned this and then I'm immediately trying to pass it on to others. I had that time to, see where others were struggling in the water, see the best ways to go about teaching those, and like just getting the opportunities to work with other instructors in the water before I like try to go out and do it myself. So yeah, I spent about 2 years or so assisting with the courses. And at that point, when I went through my PADI instructor course, I was just super confident and it was no problem passing it. And yeah, at this point, it's just so much easier working with students because I know whether it's this or that or whatever it is that's going on with them, if they're having any troubles, I know the proper way to go about addressing those and getting those worked out.
And you were diving like every week during
Yeah.
that 2 year period, right? Because I remember
I was diving like 3-4 days a week. Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. All right. I think sometimes people forget that too. They're like, I've been diving for 10 years. It's like, yeah, but number of dives and days of dives count too. So,
Yeah. No,
no,
I
very,
was diving
very
more
cool.
than almost anyone else I knew in San Diego at that time.
No, I believe it. I mean, I believe it, especially because it seemed like you and your friends just went like berserk as far as diving. You guys just like grew that from nothing to something like quick.
Yeah,
I
it was
mean,
wild.
and I mean, I'm nobody important or anything, but like I was noticing it, I mean,
Yeah, I feel like
yeah,
COVID had a really big goal with that too. Everybody was out of work. They were getting a bunch of money from the government and they were just looking for something to do. And I feel like we were in the right place at the right time to just, take that opportunity up. And it seemed like just a lot of those people ended up coming to us and it just allowed us the opportunity to grow faster than I think we would have been able to otherwise.
I agree, man. Cause it was like the young professionals, like maybe like guys
Yeah.
in college or just out of college, like maybe in
Yep.
the 30s, where like for me, it was like we got money. We were doing like family road trips and like family kind of geared stuff, which
Yep.
was awesome. But for the guys that were like hanging out in their apartment, all of a sudden didn't have to go into work, because I had a bunch of people that hit me up to take them out and teach them about spearfishing. And that was like the same group of guys and girls, like same group of people that were all about that same targeted like demographic. It was pretty funny. I was like, yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, everything else shut down.
100%.
Yeah. So you guys, you got as the, it seemed like you went from what you were partners with Mark, and now do you have your own boat or you just use the company boat, the Just Get Wet boat?
I just guide on the company boat. I think
Yeah.
it's way better to have friends with boats than to have a boat yourself. It's just too much work,
Very,
too much money going into it.
very
But yeah,
wise words.
we just got like a 32-foot center console for Just Get Wet. So we've been doing some Coronado Islands trips lately, and then hopefully this summer we'll be doing a lot more like San Clemente and offshore bluefin tuna trips. It was actually the Bobby Lee, this boat that Zenmar was running the past couple of years.
Okay.
So that thing is a little tank. It is so fun out there.
I had heard that. I think you told me that. I think it was you that told me that, or maybe it
Okay.
was Chris. Yeah, very cool. I can't wait to see what you guys produce with that tool in your back pocket. So that'll be
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. This
Um,
summer should be pretty wild.
take note. Hit up Derik if you want to go out. Yeah. Um, so moving ahead, like you, you seem to you did a bunch of trips down to Baja. So what were your most memorable trips? And you shot some big groupers for, I think, broomtail or
Yeah.
gulfy. What and not to be specific, but was it all like southern Baja? Was it middle Baja? Was it north Baja, or just everywhere in between?
Um, I've shot a lot of my fish in northern Baja, but I feel like where most of my like big fish come from is central Baja. It's just that strip like south of San Quintin and like north of Todos Santos, like that entire area is just untouched for the most part. And there's so many good diving spots around there. And then, that goes along with the adventure. That's what I'm always drawn to is it's cool driving 5, 6 hours down and being able to go dive so close to home, but then you're always wondering what's around the next point, which just down the next bend, what's down the next 100 miles, 2 hours. So every time I go down, I just find myself wanting to go to the next peak and the next peak and the next peak. So this past November, Nathan and I actually like set aside 3 weeks and we ended up going all the way down to Cabo and all the way back up in my truck. Didn't have any plans, didn't have any itinerary, nothing like that. We just went and decided to see what happens. And that was definitely my most memorable Baja trip to date. We had some pretty wild experiences down there, including a world record.
All right, well, let's talk about that trip. And we don't have to be specific. What world record was it?
So yeah, it was a pole spear broomtail grouper world record. The previous record was 42.9 pounds, held by Peter Carriel, and I was able to get a 65 pounder on a pole spear. And Nathan and I had dove some of these grouper spots last November, and we knew that they had some serious potential to hold the world record there. So kind of spent this previous year planning, getting equipment together, kind of anticipating this trip coming up, and we had a good weather window for one of our spots, so we decided to send it, and it ended up actually being our first day of diving that we were out there. So we were able to go secure that, and that was such a wild experience on its own. Like the whole trip was wild, but I feel like that one day of diving alone was like a year's worth of spearfishing experience, and just 6 hours, 8 hours, however long it was, we were on the water.
Where what pole spear did you use?
So Bly had actually hooked me up with his 7 foot Christ pull spear, I think is what it is, and it had a big long injector rod on it, which made it probably like another 2 feet longer with a slip tip and steel cable. So that's what I was running, and then that was attached to a float line just coming right off the back of the pull spear, and then up to one of the hard foam floats that I got from Mark.
Nice. I've noticed this in Baja too with the bad viz or low light, especially in the evening, in the beginning. Like you, sometimes those fish, I mean, they come out of the woodwork in the evenings and you can't even engage in them with your gun because they're so close. The
Yeah.
last trip I went on, I was like, dude, we should have brought the pole spear. Like,
Yep.
because I agree with you. Like you can only shoot so much, so many 20-pound cabrias or whatever it is. Like whatever the fish is that you see, like after the first day, you like, okay, we got fish, we're good. And then I see the transition with the pole spear, how people get into that for sure. Because it just adds a whole nother element. But I mean, you shot a 65-pound. I mean, that's incredible, dude. I didn't
Yeah.
realize when I saw you post that you shot that. Maybe I didn't read it, but yeah, you shot it with a pole spear.
Yeah.
That's a wow.
Yeah, it definitely was not as easy as I was expecting it to be. When we were down there before, we hit the spot and it was just absolutely ridiculous. There's grouper anywhere. It's like shooting fish in a barrel, and we were expecting it to be like that this past trip, but we ended up having a different Pongero than we've had in the past, and I don't think he knew the area as well as the other guy that we've had. So it took a little bit of time to find the right spot, and we never really found the spot we were looking for. We ended up in a spot that was in about 70 feet of water or so. And I mean, there's a good bit of fish there, but they were definitely being a little bit more shy. And so we were diving throughout the day. Nathan had shot a nice sized grouper. He got about a 80 pounder. And then after that, he was just diving along with me, just filming. And we found a nice little reef, and we ended up marking it with a buoy. And it was like the last drop of the day. My legs were starting to cramp up. It was starting to like get pretty windy. So I was like, okay, if I don't shoot something on this dive, we're just gonna call it and we'll come back another time. And I made a drop, and I had like a big, probably 80 pounder coming at me, and he just ended up spooking right before I took my shot. So I immediately reloaded the pole spear, turned around, and then that's when the fish that I was able to connect with ended up just giving me an opportunity on a broadside shot. So I was able to shoot him. He took off full speed into a cave. He almost wrapped me up. I like had to do a little barrel roll to get untangled from my float line. So I made it up to the surface, and then I made my first dive, and I was like damn sure that I was not getting that fish. I like made a dive down, and all I see is a 7-foot pole spear, like just the end of it, just the band sticking out of the hole. And I'm like, that's not good. So ended up like bringing my float, connecting it on. That way I knew it was just a straight line down to the bottom. I made a couple more just assessment dives just to see what was going on. And that's when I realized I was able to go up over the hole and saw that the fish had wiggled himself out on the other side of this cave. And that's the only way that I was able to get this fish. I was able to take my other pole spear that I had out on the boat with me, put a second shot with him. I had to drag my entire pole spear through that hole to get it all entangled, unclip my shooting line, and then I was finally able to bring that thing up. But it went from being like my last dive of the day, because I was starting to cramp up, to having to dive for another hour and a half to dig this fish out. Because for the world record, Nathan wasn't able to assist me at all. So it was just me. So it was
That's
pretty
a pain
brutal
in the
by
ass,
the end
man.
there.
Did you? Everybody's been there where you're cramping. You're like, man, if I really do connect with something, it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah.
Did you have to like take a break in the boat and drink anything?
I didn't take a break on a boat. I did spend quite a bit of time for my surface intervals, just laying there at the surface trying to get my heart rate to calm down as much as possible. But no, I just kind of hammered through it. I was pretty sure I was going to black out that day. If I was going to black out, it would have been doing that at that point. But I was pretty comfortable because Nathan was right next to me. If there's anybody I trust with my life, it's going to be that guy. So I was like, okay, if there's any fish that it might be worth it, it's probably going to be this one. But luckily that never ended up happening. I was able to get him out of the hole safe and sound. We got him up to the boat, and yeah, it was funny too. I didn't think it was going to be the world record at first. It wasn't that like long of a fish. Like I knew it was going to be close, but then I actually like picked him up, and he ended up just being an absolute fatty of a fish. And we put him on the scale, and I could not believe what weight it said. But yeah, it was wild.
Is that what all the footage is from that you've been posting lately, where you guys are sitting there? I think it's you or Nate, or you're sitting there and there's just big old grouper coming swimming right by in front of you. I'm like,
yeah. So that and a similar area, but yeah, same but different.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Yeah. I don't need all the details. I'm just curious. Cause you guys got some amazing footage from that trip. Yes. I think you linked up with Cameron, I'm not going to mention the spot, but I think Nate linked up with one of my guests, the last guest that I had, Cameron. Yeah.
Yep.
Down there. Yeah. That's so cool, man.
Not this past November, but the November before. Yeah. We were about to dive this spot. We were at the hotel, and the owner of the hotel comes knocking on our door. She's like, hey, there's this dude who's like interested in going out diving with you guys if you're interested. And yeah, we ended up going out with Cameron. He was a super cool guy, great diver. We got some good footage of him. So it was just interesting to link up with a diver who, just happened to be in the right place at the right time to come out with us.
Yeah, I talked to him in my garage. He was stoked on the footage too. Yeah, it's always nice to have someone that's just wants to film, right? Because you get tired of the GoPro footage, but it's also kind of neat to get a perspective of you and then the fish and how that works. Everyone knows that's ever been buddy or a partner and watched their friend dive and watch the fish come in and watch it play out and see the distance when you're like, and then see the shaft and the line follow and connect, and you're like, yeah, it's
such a cool experience.
Yeah, it's such a cool, just an angle, right, of view, overview, especially when it's real clear. It's 3 weeks, and that sounds like an awesome trip. And the way you described it, I'm just smiling because that's exactly how, I think that's the way it should be done. Like, just not even the plan, just go. And, Middle Baja, I mean, I know people listen to this, but Middle Baja is so great because there's no easy way to get to it. It's just suck it up and drive. And there is thousands of miles, but, and the thing is too, like, Pacific side or Sea Cortez side, I mean, it's down in the middle stretch of Baja. It's just the Wild West.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
I'm same with you. It's like, if I go a little bit farther, the fish will be bigger. Go a little. Sometimes it's true. The majority of the time, it doesn't really matter, but sometimes it is true.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is just the weather. Like, people are always chasing like certain spots. I'm chasing good pockets of weather is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I might have sent a text out to my friend today, the exact same thing, saying, depending on the weather, we can go here, because Baja is so long. It's such a long, huge friggin' coastline. If one spot's blown out, there's going to be another spot open. Or
I feel like
the
that's
island.
Go on.
Go ahead. No, I said just like the islands. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's how it was exactly on this last November trip. It's like, I feel like everywhere around us on the peninsula was getting hammered with wind, but Nathan and I just managed to keep an eye on buoy weather and just kind of track a little pocket of clear weather the entire way around. And I think we only got really one day where it got windy on us, but it was just beautiful the rest of the trip, just because that's the way we were guiding our trip on, is what looked nicest at that pocket of time that we had.
Yeah, that's a tough way to start the trip, though. Day one, and it's like it's all downhill from here.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It was still wild from there on out, though. We had some good experiences going forward. Dove some new locations, met some new friends. So yeah, it was a good foot to start the trip on for sure.
Yeah, the pressure is off.
Yes.
Pressure's completely off. Now you can just go try new stuff.
Yeah, you're not worried about shooting fish at that point. You're like, let's just go have fun. Let's just go have an experience. I could shoot nothing for the rest of the trip and be happy. But yeah. Was
there any issues that you guys had down there, or anything that you encountered that was like, okay, that was nice to know or good to know?
Yeah, so we were driving down, and Nathan was talking to one of his buddies who lives down in Baja, and he had mentioned that we were going to be driving through La Paz. And his buddy warned us. He's like, be careful, dude. If you drive through La Paz at night, they're going to pull you over, and they're going to ticket you 100%. We kind of blew him off. We're like, yeah, okay, like, that's not going to happen to us. Sure enough, we were driving through La Paz. It had just gotten dark. We were like getting to the outskirts of town. We thought we were going to be all good. Up comes the police behind us and flips on their lights, and they tried to claim that we were speeding. They tried to claim that we couldn't see out of our back windows. Just like totally bullshit excuses. Just pick us out, because we were obviously gringos rolling around down there. And at that point, it was getting pretty late. We still had a good couple hours in front of us, so we probably could have sat there on the side of the road and played it out, but we just gave them some money and got out of there. But other than that, that was really the only hiccup that we had the entire trip. Was just that one night with the police. Everything else went pretty smoothly.
That's good to know, though. I mean, that's good information. How much did they get you for?
More than we should have given them.
No.
I'll put it that way.
I've been there.
Yeah.
I've done it numerous times where it's like, how impatient am I feeling? How patient, how much time, Yeah.
I'm sure it could have been a lot cheaper if we just sat there and argued with them and played it out, but we were like, just get out of here.
Do both you guys speak Spanish?
Un poquito.
Yeah, that's me too.
Not
So it doesn't.
much.
Yeah,
Not much. It
I
doesn't
got
help.
pulled over. I got pulled over in TJ with my daughter's friends in the car. They're like
Okay.
blonde 10-year-old girls. And I was like, fuck, just the stress. And the guy pulled me over, it was the same thing, speeding. And I'm like, okay, cool, whatever, man. Like, and he's like, let's go to the police station. I was like, yeah, fine, let's go to the police station. It was the whole bit. And then
Yeah.
eventually, like, I was just like, so like, yes, sir. Right. No problem, sir. Like, I'll do whatever you want. I respect the people of Mexico and the citizen. And it was like, he kept trying to get me to like catch me in a bribe where it's like, can I give you money? And then they get you like, oh, you tried to bribe me. Now you owe me this. And
Yeah.
eventually he like closes up his book and he's like, what do you want to do? I was like, whatever you need me to do. I respect you. Like, whatever you want me to do. He's like, just get out of here. It's
Nice.
like everything he was trying, it wasn't working because I had time. I didn't like, I'm like, dude, I'm 44 years old. You're not going to scare me. Like, I don't care.
Right.
But yeah, I've done it though before where I'm like, okay, dude, what's the deal? Can I just give you $80 and like fuck off? Like, and the guy's like, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, you motherfuckers, man. All right,
Yeah.
cool. Whatever. But yeah, that's part of the experience. I mean, I
100%.
legitimately feel that way. Like,
100%.
yeah,
And that's what I told Nathan too. It's like, it's for the trip. It's for the
it
story.
really is though. Like, and I mean, not doesn't make it right, but like considering whatever, like $80 or $100, I don't know, whatever it is to us, it makes it to people less fortunate. And I don't mean
Yeah.
petty or demeaning or anything like that, but like that means more to certain people than us, although it's annoying
Totally.
as shit. But yeah, we got rolled up for like $50, and we paid the guy, and then he started talking to us another time, and he started talking to us about fishing, and he was all into fishing, so he's like broing out with us. I was like, you just extorted us, dude. Like, now you're trying to like
Now
fucking
you're trying to
bro
be
out with us.
friends.
And my buddies had never been to Baja, and I was like, this is just all part of the experience, dude. It's like, this is just
Yeah.
business. Just paying, and
Yeah.
now we can talk fishing. Okay, cool. It was the best. It was so funny. I mean, it wasn't bad because it was only $50 among four of us. So I was like, it was more like paying for entertainment.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So with the big grouper, you said it was a broomtail, right?
It was a
Big
broomtail.
broomtail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that like your favorite type of grouper, or just happen? I mean, you probably like me, like love all kinds of grouper, but is that really what you're targeting now, or do you have a certain goal or?
Um, I feel like that spot is just so good that like when it works out to go there, it's super fun to go out there. But I just love hunting grouper in general, whether it's broomtail, whether it's cambria, whether it's gulfy. I just love going down and shooting grouper. Just like the game of cat and mouse that you have to play on the reef with them. It's just so entertaining to me, as opposed to like maybe some other species where you're shooting the mid or upper water column. I just love being down there on the reef, and I feel like I'm actually like hunting when I'm doing that. And yeah, eating them wise, they're pretty damn good eating too.
They're amazing. Yeah. And I agree with you too. It's funny because sometimes it's like shooting fish in a barrel where they'll like stay there and
Yes.
stare at you as you come down. And you're like,
Yes.
well, that's easy. That's usually the first one of the day. But I told you, you're hiding behind rocks and it's like playing peekaboo. I see the head sticking out. Okay, let me go. What are some techniques that you use that you like or you found on that last trip or whatever it was, just over time work for grouper?
Um, Personally, just like trying to tuck yourself under a rock, just make yourself small. I'm usually not doing too much grouper calling down there. I'm not like scratching the bottom or doing anything like that. I'm just trying to make myself calm and just sit there and make them like forget that I'm even there. I feel like I'll usually like get down there, and at first like the fish will kind of spook off typically. Um, but then if I'm able to just sit down there for 20, 30 seconds, the smaller reef fish will start to come out, and then behind them it's like a couple bigger grouper will start to pop themselves out of the reef. And I feel like that's just the thing, is it's just a waiting game with them, especially, and like finding the spot too. I'll be like diving a spot, and if I'm not like seeing any signs of grouper or hearing any grouper calls after maybe 10 or 15 minutes, I'll move up the reef or switch spots completely. It's all about just finding where the fish are, especially at like some locations more than others. Like grouper I find tend to move around. It's like you might have a couple really, really good spots that have worked for you in the past, but just because like something worked for you one day, it's not necessarily going to work for you the next day, but maybe this other spot over here is going off today. So it's just about like finding exactly where those fish are and then working from there.
How do you do that? Like, what signs do you, are there smaller fish, or do you look for current, or what do you?
Current's a big thing. I feel like those bigger fish that you're usually always going to be shooting them in current. I haven't really had too many experiences where it's just dead still and you're seeing big fish everywhere. It's typically like a pretty strong current pushing through the water. And then the other big things for me is just like seeing them and hearing them. You know, you'll like get down there and maybe you'll see a couple big poops of sand, and you might not see the grouper directly, but you know that there was a big fish in the area, or you might hear just like the thuds of their tails going off. But if you're getting down there and you're not really seeing any of that after a couple dives, it's usually a pretty good sign that there's not going to be anything in that specific area. So I'll usually work on from there.
Yeah, I like what you said about the thud that you hear. Like it's incredible, man, how fast they are.
Yes.
And the power. And yeah, I mean, I shot a grouper and it was like, it played a disappearing game. I didn't even see it take off. It just disappeared. And I was like,
yeah,
did I shoot it? I mean, I heard it in my chest, but yeah, it's incredible, man. It's incredible. Yeah. Very cool. Let's see. So what, do you have any other trips planned, I would say, coming up where in Baja or just throughout the world that you really, really are looking forward to?
Don't have anything like dead set right now. I think like one of the next trips I would want to plan is going for some big amberjack down in Baja. Baja is like where I love. Like I'm sure eventually I'll start traveling to other places, but for now, like I've got some species down in Baja that I really want to land before I really start traveling to other spots around the world. And feel like a big amberjack and then a big cubera is definitely on that list. So feel like that's going to be a matter of getting more down into southern Baja, diving those deeper pinnacles, and just being there at the right place, right time. We've dove some spots that we've seen some smaller amberjack and have definitely had potential for the future, but haven't gotten a chance to get a big one yet.
No, I understand, especially people, to put in perspective, the people that haven't been down to Mexico. I mean, you're paying hundreds of dollars for like a dream trip that someone would charge you thousands of dollars for.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. It's like 100%. I can go 5 times a year. I could go once a month, really, if I wanted to, where me spending $3,000 is like asking my wife and kids to sacrifice a lot. Like,
Yeah. I feel like it depends on like what kind of person you are though, and like what your kind of lifestyle is. If you have that time to go out down there and maybe you don't have the biggest budget in the world, it's definitely worth it just like going down and winging it. Whereas some people, they're super, super busy and maybe they don't have all the time in the world, but they have the money. I feel like for those people, it's definitely going to be more beneficial to hire a guide, because then, you're not like spending that 1 week out of the year that you might have free and getting totally busted because you don't know the right spot at the right time. So it just depends on your personal situation as far as like,
that's a good point.
Way to go about planning.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, very true. I mean, if you don't have the time, you got to make it count. So yeah, you don't have time to figure crap out. I mean, if we were going to like Madagascar, it would be like, no, put me on fish now.
Yeah,
because I don't want to be. Yeah, totally understand. Well, very cool. So, what gear wise, what do you prefer? What do you like? When you hunt, what do you usually hunt with? Like guns, fins, mask, whatever, wetsuits. What do you like?
As far as guns, is always the Captain Bligh guns. Personally, I don't shoot a whole lot of pole spears. I knew that could get the pole spear record on this trip, so that's kind of why I brought it down. But for the most part, I'm shooting Captain Bligh. I remember I used to shoot just like standard rail guns that I would get from the Spear Shack, and they were great starting off. And then I shot one of Bligh's personal guns, and that thing was just an absolute laser. So I bought that off of him and then just never looked back. So I bought 2 more from him, and that's kind of completed my arsenal. I have a small, mid, and long range gun from him now, and have been loving them ever since. As far as other gear, fins, it's like not super soft of a fin, but also not super stiff of a fin either. Kind of like a medium soft fin is what I prefer. I love the soft dive R's. I used those for quite a while until I was dumb and left them on top of my truck pulling out of the grocery store. So those are long gone. Lately, I've been kicking a pair of leader fins, and I feel like for the price, you can't really beat the quality of them. They're definitely not as good as carbon fiber, but you still get what you pay for sure. As far as a wetsuit, I love my Rife. I've tried a bunch of different styles of wetsuits, and I feel like for me, my chest pad always comes ripping off. And I've noticed the new Rife suits, their chest pad is like actually stitched on, and it's been holding up really well. So that's what I've been using for my wetsuit and been loving it. And yeah, I feel like for a mask, it's just like the lowest volume Freedive mask you can find that still fits your face. Obviously, that's like the biggest thing, but just super low volume is important. I just use a generic, like China made Freedive mask that's super cheap, but it gets the job done.
Yep. Yeah. So here's a question that I've had people ask me a lot of. Where do you like to wear your knife?
I wear my knife on my leg. Yeah,
Okay.
personally, like for me, I'm kind of a bigger guy. I always feel like fumbling around when I'm trying to get something off of my weight belt, and like it always used to piss me off. So I wear it on the inside of my left leg. I'm right-handed, so that just allows me a super easy place to reach down and grab that. And I haven't had any problems with that whatsoever. It's always been easily accessible whenever it's needed. The only thing that's a little bit of a downside is sometimes you'll feel like kicking up on your other leg when you're thinning down, but I feel like it's worth it. It's not that big of a deal.
No, I've done that quite a few for a lot of years inside my calf.
Yep.
And then I kind of switched to my weight belt recently, which I guess they all have their pros and cons. I guess the biggest thing is just getting comfortable with your gear and how it works, and knowing don't dive down until you feel that little click on your knife, because it'll fall right out. Like
yes. 100%. That happened on this last trip.
Yeah, I think
lost a pretty nice one.
Man, I'm telling you, that's why I don't buy those expensive knives, because you're gonna lose your knife. Like you just do. Yeah, I did the same thing.
Unavoidable.
I saw a dog tooth and a shark kind of hitting at my knife as it was falling. I was like, oh, it's so insulting. Oh, well, very cool. How do people get in touch with you, Derik?
You can find me on my Instagram. It's Derik Rush. You can also find me in the Just Get Wet shop. I'm working in there currently just on the weekends. During the summer, we're going to be open more weekdays as well, and then teaching classes on the weekends as well. So yeah, my Instagram, Derik Rush, or the Just Get Wet Instagram is a great place to reach me as well. Yeah, hope to get more of you guys in the water, create a safer freedive community, and get more of you shooting fish.
Are you working? You're not working full time then at Just Get Wet. Are you working at the Spear Shack still, or no?
I've never worked at the Spear Shack. I've spent a lot of time hanging out there, but Mark doesn't hire anybody. Mark is a one-man show.
So, what do you do? What do you do for work now?
It's just working in the Just Get Wet shop.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's been filling up my hours lately, giving me time to dive on the side. So that's what I've been doing.
It's nice because you have that flexibility that way, to enjoy, to just drop everything and go. Yeah, especially
it's definitely difficult to find another job where it's just like, hey guys, I'm going to go dive Baja for 3 weeks. I'll see you later. Still have a job when you get back.
It's funny because I feel like there's like waves in your life with people. Some of you invest in your job enough after like 20 years, then you get all this freedom, right? But then when you're younger, you screw around so much and like taking all your holiday time as best as you can to go do those things. And then, then you're like locked down. And then when you hit like 40, all of a sudden, like my boss surfs and he's pretty cool. And it's like, hey, we have a lot of stuff to do, but, if you get your work done, you can pretty much do whatever you want to do. And then like we were talking about with COVID opened everybody's eyes up, to the fact that, hey, you can get work done and still still work remotely, which was pretty awesome.
100%.
Well, very cool. I appreciate you taking time out of your day and finally linking up with me. It was a pleasure to have you on the show, and I could probably talk to you for another few hours, but I don't want to record top secret information of Baja, so we're speaking very vague. Yeah. Hold on. But yeah, so I really appreciate it, Derik.
Yeah, it was awesome being on here. I was stoked to do it. It was great chatting with you.